Hi everyone. Welcome to our early literacy skills. I guess we're calling it a series. Yeah. I'm Miss Carla.
And I'm Tammy.
And yeah, so what we're doing for the over the last several weeks and continuing is going over just the different components of early literacy, talking about each one. Sometimes when you hear all those words, they can seem a little intimidating, but they're really simple, easy concepts, and there's so much you can do just at home with your kids for free, just in your normal life. And so, yeah, that's what we want to talk about. So far, the skills we've talked about have been print motivation, print awareness, letter knowledge, and vocabulary. So if you want to look back, those are here on our Facebook page. Feel free to look back at those. But today we are talking about narrative skills. So that is the component of early literacy, and that is just being able to describe things and events and tell stories. So an important component of narrative skills is sequencing, what order things happen. Eventually, as a reader will be able to say what happened first and then what happened next. So that's a really important part of being able to tell or retell a story.
It's really easy to work with kids and to get them to really hone their narrative skills. You know, kids will do that. And ask them, when they come home from school, ask open-ended questions so that they can tell you, because we tend to say, ask them questions that are yes or no questions. But ask them things and let them explain stuff to you, because that's a really important skill, especially with Common Core now. Sequencing is a huge component of Common Core. So having a child be able to tell you what happened first, then what happened, and what was the end is really important. And you can do that by sitting and reading to them and giving them an opportunity to tell you. You read a page and then let them say what happens next. A lot of times that starts out with pictures. Early readers, they're looking at the pictures and telling you what happened. But the retelling is the narrative part. So that's what we want to hone in on. And always, like if you're in the kitchen, talk to your child about what you're doing. If you're baking a cake, the whole time you're doing it and you're getting things out and getting things ready, talk to your child. I'm going to go to the refrigerator and get the eggs. And what else do we need? Do we need a bowl? Yeah, and then have him or her tell you what's the next thing you need, so that they can learn those narrative skills about what comes first and should we put them in the oven before while they're still in the box? I mean, make the child really aware of what comes first in the order of things. And talking with children is crucial. Just that interaction all day long, just talk to them all day long, because it develops comprehension skills. They learn, with not even realizing, they're learning what words mean and what sequencing, everything. It's important that things happen when we read directions. Being able to tell the directions back and those things, that's very important. When kids first learn to read, they learn through the pictures, like we said. So what you can do if you're at home, just have a pencil and paper or markers out on the table, and have them watch you write, "Today at home we will," and just leave it blank. And then ask the child to finish a sentence by drawing pictures of something that'll happen today. And then at the bottom, after they finish drawing the pictures, you write your description of what you see on the page. So if they say, "Today I have soccer practice," they're going to draw a picture of that, and you write it at the bottom, so they can make that correlation between the picture and the words to tell the story. Children learn that drawing a picture can tell a story or describe an event.
Yeah, so it's important to have conversations when you're reading books, before you read, while you're reading, and after you're reading. So I want to show a few examples of books that are really good for teaching narrative skills. Everyone loves Pete the Cat. And what I like about, maybe not all the, Pete has got so many books now, they've really done a great job at marketing him out there. But those early Pete books all are very repetitive. So what happens is we're counting, and it's the same thing every time. Did Pete cry? Goodness, no. Buttons come and buttons go. That happens after each button pops off his shirt. So it's sequencing in that they know what's going to happen next. The next thing that's gonna happen is Pete's gonna lose a button. And then is he gonna cry? Goodness, no. So it's a really good book of a repetitive thing. There are so many good books like that, but those are great for those sequencing narrative skills because it's very easy for an early reader or pre-reader to understand that story. It's not super complex. It's the same thing happening over and over again, like, little old lady who swallowed a fly type thing. Those things that just the same thing happens over and over.
Even Brown Bear by Bill Martin Jr. is a really good one because even though it's not exactly, well, the repetitive part is Brown Bear, what do you see? Kids start to learn what the next thing is. They can tell you, even really, really young kids can tell you what the next animal that they'll be seeing is. So the early part of that is repetitive. The part you would be reading is repetitive.
So this is another example of really great books to use for narrative skills. This is a wordless book. There's no words in here. This book is telling a story just with pictures. And so your child can look at this book and create the story. They don't even have to be able to read words. They look at this book and they create the narrative. Looking at the pictures and what happens, they tell a story that happens. And even though the pictures are all the same, the story I tell may be a little different from the story Miss Tammy tells, but it's a great thing for a child to be able to look at these pictures and create a narrative and a story to go with them. There are some great wordless books. I feel like they don't get checked out as much as they should because people think, well, I want to read to my kids, this isn't reading. But this is a literacy skill, absolutely. This is narrative skills, and it's important.
A lot of people don't know what to do with a wordless book because it's not something that you come across all the time, but like Carla said, my perception of the book may be totally different than hers, and that's okay. There's not any one right or wrong.
And wordless books are great, to go over together, but it's also great for, let's say I need to get some laundry done and I'm trying to give my kids something to occupy them. Sure, I could give them a tablet or something, but you give them a wordless book. They can kind of work with this on their own. Even though they can't read words, they don't need to read words to be able to read this story. So this is something, yes, it's great to do together, but it's also a good one to give those early pre-readers just for time on their own. And you'll be amazed. You'll see them in the corner kind of telling this story to themselves or to their imaginary friends.
Or their siblings.
Yeah, sure. So it's wordless books do not get checked out enough. And there are some beautiful ones. I will say, generally, wordless books have gorgeous illustrations, because that's what they're relying on.
Several of the Caldecott Award winners are wordless books. There's several in there, and because that's a book that's picked as a winner strictly on the artwork, so a lot of those are wordless.
One thing to remember too, when you're reading a book with your child, it's okay to stop the story and explain something. Explain a word. Maybe there's a word you get to that they don't know. I know, I wish I'd brought it. When I read any of the Bear books by Karma Wilson, there's it's these really cute books about animals. They're another series that's very repetitive. That's great for narrative skills. But the same kind of cast of characters of animals are in all of them. And so Wren and Raven always come in. I don't know that young kids know what a wren is or a raven, so I'll always stop and say, look, what are they? Well, I'll show them Wren and Raven in the pictures. These are birds. Hare is in there. We don't call him rabbit, we call him hare. So those are two different words that really mean the same thing. So it's fine to stop in the story and explain things, explain words, explain parts of the story that may be a little complex for your child to understand. You don't have to just plow through that whole book. Feel free to stop and talk about it. And they may have questions. Don't stop. If your child has a question in the middle of a book, they're like, well, wait, let's finish. No, let them ask their questions. They're trying to understand.
Because a child may say, what is that? Or it's okay to stop. It's okay not to finish the book. I mean, if a child, sometimes their attention span's just not there. You don't want them to dislike reading, so if you have to stop, that's okay. You can pick it up the next night. But if they ask you what a word is, or what that picture is, like Carla said, raven, we say blackbird, or we say crow. So then they'll know that if they hear the word raven, we say crow, we say blackbird. So there's a lot of words like that that have multiple meanings or multiple names.
Yeah, those are just great opportunities. Just teaching moments to learn new vocabulary. But if I just keep reading, Wren and Raven came through the door and keep going, they're just kind of going to glaze over that. But if I stop and say, what is a wren? What is a raven? Well, let's look at the picture. What is that? They've now learned what a raven is, what a wren is. after you read a story with a child, ask open-ended questions. You want to discuss the book, but don't just say, "What did Raven do? What happened next? Well, then what happened? What did they do now?" Ask those open-ended questions. That helps them with comprehension and helps them with that sequencing. They're not just answering one very pointed question. They have to really think of that whole story and get the sequence. That's huge with narrative skills. Very important. Model reading nursery rhymes. People don't read nursery rhymes anymore. It makes us sad, which we could do a whole video series just on that. But nursery rhymes are important. I mean, the rhythm, the rhyme is great. They are a part of our literary history that we feel is getting lost, and it makes us real sad. So nursery rhymes are important. Read those nursery rhymes. There are a lot of words in nursery rhymes that aren't commonly used words. Again, a great way to increase that vocabulary for your child and explain new things. Nurseryrhymes.org is a great website, and I'll actually, after the video, I'll put a link down below so you can click it. But it lists alphabetically a very comprehensive list of all the nursery rhymes. I know it's funny, when I first started here, I mean, in case you don't know, Tammy and I aren't exactly the same age, so we're from different generations, but there were, and I came from a family that did read nursery rhymes and we were very big library supporters, but there were a couple of them that I had not heard of. I didn't know, and you go a generation below me, there's even more of them they don't know, and these kids today, they don't know any of them. And
yeah, when I was younger, that was one of the things that I remember so much of my grandparents. They taught me nursery rhymes. My mom reinforced them because we would say them all the time, and it's really, they're so lilting, and there's a rhythm to the words in them most of the time, and so it's such a good thing to learn to read. But more important than that, I was memorizing these things because of and some of them are songs. But nurseryrhyme.org it's got every nursery rhyme under the sun, even some that I never heard of, or some that have kind of gone out of style, but it's a really good thing to do. Also a good way to introduce vocabulary.
Yeah, so Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Pail.
Do we say
What
pail?
is pail? What is a pail?
We say bucket.
Yeah, so maybe your child wouldn't even know, you say that sentence, they may not even know what that means. So this is, ways to introduce new words. Nursery rhymes were written a long time ago, so the language isn't exactly the way we speak today. But that's a great thing to teach your kids new words, expand that vocabulary.
And Carla and I had this discussion about Jack and Jill. We were talking about Jack and Jill going up the hill and fetching a pail of water, and then he falls down and breaks his crown. Even though, like Carla said, we're not from the same generation, the books I had showed Jack breaking the top of his head, which is the crown.
Which is horrifying. That's a cranial fracture. It's real bad. Yeah.
Right. But, that shows how much things have changed through the years, but small children may not realize that this is a crown. Today's versions of the same nursery rhyme shows Jack with a crown, like Burger
like a
King.
tiara, yeah.
And so he breaks his crown. So,
and it's less violent that way.
Well, yeah, it's less violent that way.
I will say nursery rhymes were written a long time ago. Some of them are a little violent, and not violent, but just, I don't know, they're a little rougher than maybe the books we have today. They don't sugarcoat as much as we do now. But,
poor Humpty Dumpty. But yeah, when you say all the king's horses and all the king's men, will kids understand that? So you might want to explain. I don't know if you can really explain Humpty Dumpty because he's an egg and he falls off a wall. I mean, I don't know how much of that you could explain, but nursery rhymes are great and kids remember them, and it's just so lilting and so the rhythm of it is so great. But it is a good opportunity to introduce vocabulary that you may never use again. I mean,
yeah, and it does sound silly, but it does. I mean, I think about that. It worries me that as generations go and we don't hear them, that's a part of our history, a part of our literary history that one day will just be gone. And I know most people are like, but as library people, that hurts us real deep.
Early childhood people.
They're important, yeah. We don't want to lose that.
No, and if you don't know, go to nurseryrhyme.org, and
I'll link it below.
Tons of books here that we have that we can help you. If you're interested in a wordless book, come talk to us and we'll show you where some are.
And what to do with a wordless book.
What to do with a wordless book.
They just don't circulate as well as I think they should. People don't.
You just don't know what to do with them. You just think, this is missing something.
But narrative skills, creativity, I mean, they're great. I can't say enough good things about a wordless book. You put a wordless book in a child's hand, you are just giving them the freedom to create a narrative, create a story, and it's exciting. Yeah.
And even when your children draw pictures, if they're drawing pictures, say, what is that? What is he doing? Don't just say that, that's cute, or, oh, I see you drew a football or whatever. What are you going to do with that football? These are things you can do while you're cooking supper, while you're washing clothes, things like that, because I know we're all busy. But anytime you can talk to your child and get him to talk back, learn those narrative skills, it's a winner. It's an A+ skill.
Awesome. Well, thank y'all so much for listening. We do have one more early literacy component we'll do next week. And if you have more questions about early literacy, if there are things you would like us to cover in addition to just these components, let us know down below. We're happy to answer any questions, continue this as long as you guys want. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. If you want to, like I said, as soon as this is over, I'll put that link down below for the nursery rhymes. And if this is your first time watching, feel free to look back. We've had these up for several weeks. They're here on the Facebook page, just to learn some easy things you can do to help your early readers get started.
Lots of easy, inexpensive things you can do with children. So come back.
Bye.